Thank you very much, Emery. Thank you very much to give me this opportunity to give this kind of lecture on Ramanujan continued fraction. So I start with the bijective proof of an identity. This is a beautiful identity, and at the Greek time, 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7, etc. So this is a visual proof. You don't need to speak. It's proof without word. And at the time of Pythagoras, there was many visual proof, like the famous Pythagoras theorem. So this is the rectangle, triangle. And visual proof of Pythagoras theorem is the following. That's the proof. A, B, C. Because in this movement of triangles, the yellow area is invariant. So I would like, at the modern time, we can give the same essence of proof with much more complicated identities. Usually people believe that this kind of visual proof is only for children, easy identity, but it's possible to do in such spirit. And especially one identity involving the famous Ramanujan continued fraction. So it's an infinite series with a variable q. This is a very famous continued fraction. And it's infinite. If you cut, you have a rational fraction. Of course, Ramanujan here, and I have visited the house of Ramanujan, Kubakonam. It's impressive of this historical place. So here, this identity, the Ramanujan continued fraction, is equal to the ratio of these two infinite power series. I am going to give a visual proof, a bijective proof of this identity. So to give visual proof, you have to give interpretation of each of the stems. You have to, what is this, what is this, what does it mean? You have to translate each term of the identity into some visual pattern, something you can see, and then the identity will be a consequence of a relation of the combinatorics explaining this, and the combinatorics explaining this. So this ratio here comes from the two left-hand side of the two famous Roger-Ramanujan identities. So here is the first identity, second identity. This infinite series is the infinite product of this for all the number I equal 1 and 4 modulo 5. And the second identity, you just add this small term, and this completed change is now 2 and 3 modulo 5. So you have first to give interpretation, combinatorial interpretation of this, and then the combinatorial interpretation of this, and see why it is this equal this. So formal power series and generating function. So I will start with partition of integer. A partition of an integer, for example, 43 is 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 2. So it's a decomposition of an integer into strictly positive integer, and the order in which you make the decomposition does not matter. So you can always put this number in weakly decreasing, and partitions can be visualized by what is called a Ferrer diagram. Ferrer diagram is a kind of thing like this, a hook with a little stair, and each part of the partition, 6, 6, 6, 5, is the number of cells in each row of this diagram. So here there is 43 cells, and 43 is decomposed into such a row. Or if you prefer point, this is another partition. Ferrer diagram, 30 equals 9 plus 7 plus 4 plus 4. Okay, so here it's all possible partition of 2, of 3, partition of 4 or 5. So you see there is 1, 2, 3, 5, 7. This is the first value of the number of ways to decompose an integer into integer. So you have what this sequence of numbers in combinatorics 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, and we associate what is called a generating function, an infinite power series. For each number, you put this number A5, number of ways to decompose 5 into partition, and you put Q power 5. And plus point is infinite power series. It's just formal power series. We don't consider any conversion analysis. So it is a very important tool in combinatorics, this generating function, formal power series. And then there is some, of course, there is a calculus algebra of formal power series. It can take the sum, the product, substitution, everything. And all this calculus at the floor level, at the analytic level, can be lifted at the combinatorial level. You can define the sum of two combinatorial objects, the product, the sequence, etc. And I'm going to define what is a combinatorial object. Partition is a combinatorial object. So a partition, a Ferrer diagram, is formed of a certain number of rows. So this is, there is 5 points in the I equal 5, and I associate a weight Q power I, here I equal 5. Then what is a rectangle? A Ferrer diagram is formed by rectangle, so I have a sequence of rows. A rectangle with I column is just a sequence of rows. And then there is in what we call symbolic calculus in combinatorics, if you take a sequence of something, and if you know the generating function for something, the object, then the sequence is 1 over 1 minus the generating function of the object. So this is we call this in combinatorics symbolic method. It's especially in the beginning of this book, analytic combinatorics. So say you have a certain object, combinatorial object. I don't define what it is. There is a weight. The weight of the object was the number of cells of the Ferrer diagram, of the number of points in a certain row. And if you have a sequence of objects, you take the empty object, you take the object itself, the square of the object, the product of two, etc., etc. If you have a sequence of objects, then the generating function of sequence is 1 over the generating function of the object itself. See? So here we are in example, we take a very simple object, cube, a row with I cell, generating function is reduced a monomial, sequence of this is 1 over 1 minus generating function of a single row. Now a Ferrer diagram can be decomposed into rectangle in a unique way. So this decomposition is going to correspond to a product of rectangle, which is going to give me, at this analytic level, a product of generating function. So you decompose this rectangle. Maybe some rectangles are empty. This is a rectangle with 3 columns, with 5 columns. There is no rectangle with 4 columns. This is empty. This was at the old time when there was transparencies and overhead projector. And then this product gives you this generating function. It's a product. This is a rectangle with 1 column, rectangle with 2 columns, rectangle with m columns. So the principle is that if you have a product of 2 objects, if you have 2 combinatorial objects with some weight, then the product is a Cartesian product, and the weight is the product of the weight. Here the weight is Q power the number of cells of each rectangle. So the decomposition of the Ferrer into rectangle corresponds to the decomposition of the generating function into a product like this. And then so this is a generating function of Ferrer diagram with at most m column. So if I take general Ferrer, this will give me at the limit this infinite product. And then Roger-Ramanujan identities. So we can guess now what is the right-hand side is a product of rectangle such that the number of columns of each rectangle is equal to 1 and 4 modulo 5. So this means that this is a generating function for partition of integer such that the parts are equal to 1 and 4 modulo 5. So here I take the example of n equal 9. And you can decompose 9 equal 9 equal 4 plus 4 plus 1 equal 6 plus 1. You can decompose it in 1, 2, 3, 4. There is 5 different ways to decompose 9 into parts which are equal to 1 and 4 modulo 5. It's only 1, 4, 6, and 9 which can be used. So this is the right-hand side. the interpretation of the right-hand side is some partition with some constraint in the part of the partition, or in the number of columns of each rectangle of the partition. Now, what means the left-hand side? So if it was a 1 here, if it was only a 1, then this would be the generating function for Ferrer diagram having at most n column, or also symmetrically at most n rows. And I claim that if I multiply by this on the numerator, this is going to be exactly the generating function, or what is well known in combinatorics, what is called D-partition. D for difference. D-partition is the partition of an integer such that the difference between two consecutive parts is at least equal to 2. And then, in fact, there is a bijection between partition having at most n part. Oh, this is in French. Sorry, but it's a mixture. It's make some exotic slide. There is a partition with at most n part, and D-partition having exactly n parts. There is a bijection between the two. The bijection is the following. This is a partition, a Ferrer diagram with at most n part. And then you have to multiply by q power m to the square. But going back to the Greek, we know that m to the square is 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7 plus etc. So I take this n to the square equals this, and then I put to my partition here, I add 1 cell, 3 cell, 5 cell, etc. So this is a correspondence between partition in white having at most n parts and D-partition having exactly n parts, but now there is an extra factor q power, the total number of cells I have added, which is exactly n to the square. And so I have the interpretation of this term. The left-hand side is the number of D-partition. So D-partition of n, in the example, is n equal 9. And so how many D-partition? So there is 9, 8 plus 1, 7 plus 2, 6 plus 3, 5 plus 3 plus 1, and that's the only D-partition. The difference between two consecutive parts is at least 2. So I have only 5. And this is a kind of miracle. You can feel the deep identity of Ramanujan is that the left-hand side is equal to this. It means that for any n, the number of D-partition of n is exactly the number of partitions such that the parts are equal to 1 and 4 modulo 5. And to find a correspondence between this and this is very hard. There is no nice, simple correspondence. To explain this at the level of partition. There is many proof of this identity by calculus, everything, but to explain this at the level of partition, it's, if you find a nice, beautiful bijection, you will be famous. So now what about the second identity? So you just multiply by q power n, means that instead of it means that the D-partition, you are adding one cell everywhere in each row, so the D-partition of the second identity, they must avoid the part 1. You are not allowed to put a 1. This means exactly to do this. So it's D-partition with part not equal to 1. So there was 5, I delete these 2. Multiplying by q power n means you are adding a cell in every row. So from the 5 I get 3, and now this changed completely. All the partitions equal to 2 and 3 modulo 5 are now this one, which are 3. 3, 3. So this is again one of the beauty of the identity, one of the beauty of combinatorics, is that there is the same number of partitions on each side. So again, it's a main problem to find, to explain this by bijection. So what I'm going to do is to give you an example of a proof without words. I have to speak to explain each part. It means that we are going to decompose each of these parts into some combinatorial object, and then the identity will come from a combinatorial fact about the decomposition. So now we know the interpretation of this and this. This is a generating function for D-partition. without any part with no one. This is departition. And I have to give interpretation of this and to show that this is a ratio of this divided by this. In fact, if you take the right-hand side of the Roger-Ramanujan identity, you have the infinite product. But to give a proof of this is much more difficult. I will only give a proof of this. This is much more easy to give a cometal proof of this identity. And you see, if you take this infinite product and this continued fraction, then you can deduce this beautiful continued fraction equal this. This was in the first letter, the famous first letter that Ramanujan sent to Hardy in the first letter in 1914. And Hardy say, these identities, this is well known, defeated me completely. I had never seen anything like this before. A single look at them is enough to show that they could be only written down by a mathematician of the highest class. So there was many such identity in Ramanujan letters to Hardy. Here is Ramanujan and Hardy, so he was invited in, everybody knows the story in London. So the bijective proof of identity, bijective paradigm, I'm going to give a more simple example. So instead of taking the left-hand side of Roger-Ramanujan identity, q power m the square divided, of the first Ramanujan identity, which was this in green, divided by this in red. I change the identity, I take the square now. If I take the square, then I get all, this is much more simple. So I am going to give you, as a preparation for the next step, a bijective proof of this, a cometal proof of this. So now we know that the right-hand side is exactly this. This is the number of partitions of n. So the right-hand side is this picture, the Ferrer diagram counted by the number of points, number of cells of the Ferrer. This is the right-hand side. Now the left-hand side. So there is three terms, the green, the blue, and the red. So the green term is q power m to the square. The green term is the square m by m. Now the red term, that we know, it's a generative function for partition having at most m part. Here. In my example, m equals 4, so I have at most m part, maybe it can be equal to m equal 4. Now I have this to the square. So the blue term is again another Ferrer having at most m part. So I have to the product of all this derivative function is going to be the product of the cometal objects themselves, the Cartesian product. So I put them together, and there is a very simple thing to do, is this blue part to take the symmetry to the diagonal, and this gives you this. And you see this equal to this. This is a proof of the identity. I have to say something more. What means the identity? The identity means that if you take a Ferrer diagram like this, you take the biggest square you can find in the Ferrer. Here it's a 4x4 square. If you take the biggest square, what remains is two Ferrer, one having at most m column and one having at most m row. That's very simple. Take a Ferrer, the biggest square, is the decomposition is very simple. Once you know how to translate, once you know how to translate everything, if you know how to translate all that, so this is technical translation, but then the proof is reduced to something very simple at the level of the cometal object. So take a Ferrer, extract the biggest square you can find in it, and what remains, when you delete, what remains is two Ferrer at most m row, at most m column. And that's it, that's the proof. This is a visual proof for Well, I speak a little. There was a few words in this proof. It's not a proof without words, but one, it's just a question to be a good commentarist, to translate each part of the identity into some picture, and then the correspondence is very easy at this level. But some identities are very difficult to prove at the combinatorial level. Here it's easy, an easy identity. So the philosophy is that we are drawing calculus. There is some big identity. Each part of the identity is going to be translated into a picture or a combinatorial object, and then we work at the level of combinatorial object. And conversely, if you are computing with drawing means combinatorial object, and we have defined the sequence of objects, the sum of objects. You can even define the derivative of a combinatorial object, the integral, all this. The classical analytic calculus can be lifted at the level of combinatorial object. We can define the integral of a tree or an object, etc. We can define the derivative, etc. So there is a calculus which is much more rich because at the level it's a beautiful garden. When you translate everything at the level of geometric function, you lose a lot of the beauty of this bijection in combinatorial object. So which means that instead of trying to prove identity, we prove some correspondence, and the interest is to have a better understanding of the identity. Once you have the correspondence, some identity maybe you can verify by recurrence, etc., but when you translate them at the combinatorial level and try to find the correspondence, the bijection, then you understand much better the identity. So now I am going to interpret the Ramanujan continuum fraction with what is called heaps of pieces. So this is a continuum fraction, and this is the heaps of pieces. So imagine a chessboard, and imagine some diamonds in wood, and you put them one by one. They fall down on the chessboard such that the diamond is projected on such diamond. It's a union of a white cell and a black cell. And then they fall one by one, and what remains at the end is the intuitive idea of heaps of diamonds on the chessboard. So we don't know, from this picture, we don't know if this diamond fall down before this one, but this one fall down after this one, which fall down after this one, etc. So there is some, you keep some information in this picture, but you lose in which order they fall down. So I will take, for Ramanujan continuum fraction, the diamonds will be only on the positive integer, and it will be just a segment of length 2 connecting I and I plus 1. So, yes?
Can you repeat the definition of heap?
Oh, I cannot give the definition.
No, whatever.
It's just an intuitive idea. You are going to have an intuitive idea of heaps of diamonds on this line. So heaps of diamonds, so I take a word, sigma 2, sigma 3, sigma 5. Each variable sigma I corresponds to a column. This is a column sigma 0, sigma 1, sigma 2. So each, for example, sigma 2 will correspond to diamonds 2, 3. I am going to take diamonds, it's segment, I plus 1. So sigma 2 will be 2, 3. Sigma 4 is 4, 5, etc. So you have a word, a sequence of such letters which correspond to column. Each sigma I is a diamond, I plus 1. And they are going to fall down. So sigma 2 must fall down first. Sigma 2, then sigma 3, then sigma 5. So you see the diamonds are falling down according to the word W. And what we get at the end is a heaps of diamonds. Intuitive idea. There is a formal definition. There is different possibility definition. You see, there is. Just take the intuitive. If I give formal definition, I am going to lose everybody to lose the beauty of the. But this is intuitive. So you have a word, and you forget in which order they fall down, but you keep some information. This one fall down after this one, or this one. I don't know which one fall down first. But the picture is an intuitive idea of a heaps of diamonds. And this picture is I repeat again. Say for a word, you give a certain heaps, but maybe two different words is going to give the same heaps. And two different words giving the same hips will be exactly obtained by commuting some consecutive variable. If sigma I and sigma j, the difference between I and j bigger or equal to 2, then you can commute the two variables, for example, which means you can commute in the which order. So in fact, I say that this hips of pieces is a combinatorial, geometrical combinatorial interpretation of the so-called Cartier-Fouatat commutation monoid. Commutation monoid, it's some monoid with some commutation. Here's the Cartier with the quadratic formula, and here Fouatat is, it was a coincidence that he's taking the infinity is in hand. So this Cartier-Fouatat is a lecture note, and you see the dimers are this, the pieces which fall down, and the commutation is that two dimers are going to commute if and only if the difference is bigger or equal to 2. This is the first equation to define Coxeter group, symmetric group, etc. So this is just the first equation. And the words which are defined up to this commutation, the equivalence class are in bijection with hips of dimers. The hips is a visualization of the equivalence class of this monoid generated by this commutation. So for example, this word gives this, and now I need the definition of a maximal piece. When you have a hips like this, so I take the same hips of dimers, and the blue piece are maximal piece. Maximal piece then means you can delete them. They can evaporate from the hips without any touching anybody else. The dual notion will be minimal piece, which are exactly the piece which are on the floor level. So there is maximal piece, minimal piece. And the pyramid definition is hips of dimers, or hips of much more general, having only one maximal piece. Example, this is a pyramid. So this is a maximal piece, which means that all the pieces, when you look above the hips, this is intuitive definition, you don't see the pieces in full size. These pieces, you will see only half of the dimers. Some dimers, you don't see them at all. So this is a maximal piece. And for Ramanujan cosine fraction, I will need semi-pyramid of dimers. So this is a semi-pyramid of dimers. It means the maximal, it's a pyramid with a unique maximal piece. And this maximal piece has projection 0, 1. See, it is dimers, the projection is a dimer 0, 1. This means that the maximal piece in blue is touching the vertical axis. Though the name semi-pyramid is like a pyramid would be like this, and it's like if you are cutting general pyramids. And the Catalan number, of course, appear many times everywhere. So they appear again. The number of semi-pyramids with n dimers is exactly the very classical Catalan number. 1 over n plus 1, Banébal coefficient, 2 n chosen. 1, 2, 5, 14, 42, etc. The geometric function is algebraic geometric function. It satisfies an equation of degree 2. And this is easy. It's easy to prove that this is Catalan number. You can decompose this into a product of something, and you can get the quadratic algebraic equation of Catalan number from this picture. Now I am going to put some weight on the dimers. Not yet, so 1, 2, 5, 14, if you are not convinced that this is a Catalan number. I am going to put some weight on the dimers. The weight of the hips is going to be the product of the weight of each individual piece, and the weight of a piece of in the hips does not depend on the level. It's only the weight of the projection. You take the projection of the piece on the floor level, and then you put a weight for this, we call this the basic pieces. So I will take the projection of all these hips of dimers will be dimers I minus 1i. I will put a weight minus q power I. So example, you see this is a semi-pyramid, and the projection of this is 0, 1, so I will put a weight minus q. Projection in 1, 2, I put all these dimers have weight minus q2, minus q3, minus q4, minus q5, so the total weight of this semi-pyramid is minus 1 power 10 q power all this q power 23. So there is a minus 1 power the number of dimers, and q power all this sum where you recognize a certain partition of integer. So the weight of the any dimers is minus q power k, is the projection is k minus 1k. Now I claim that the sum of the weight of all semi-pyramid of dimers is exactly the Ramanujan continuous fraction. This is the genetic function of this. Sum of the weight of all formal weight, the sum of all this is going to be exactly the Ramanujan continued fraction. So proof. A semi-pyramid can be decomposed, again, a sequence of something, a sequence of primitive semi-pyramid. What means primitive semi-pyramid? Primitive semi-pyramid means that below the maximal piece, there is nobody. Below the blue cell, a primitive semi-pyramid, when in the first column is empty, there is only the maximal piece. And a semi-pyramid can be uniquely decomposed into a sequence of primitive semi-pyramid. So proof. So take the minimum here, take the next one. See, each time in the first column, I take the minimum level, the lowest blue dimers here, I push, then I take the next one, I push, then I take the next one, I push again. So you have decomposed your semi-pyramid in a sequence of 3 primitive semi-pyramid. Which means that you see, a primitive semi-pyramid, by definition, there's only one maximal piece, there's nobody below. The weight here is minus q, it's the first column. And what remain here, you see, it's again a semi-pyramid again. But if you take this semi-pyramid, you have to shift the weight. The weight of each dimer was minus q power I. You have to shift the weight to q power I plus 1. So this is a map delta is shifting the weight, replacing q power I by q power I plus 1. So now I apply the general lemma of symbolic calculus, that if you know the generating function of primitive semi-pyramid, then sequence of primitive semi-pyramid is 1 over 1 minus the generating function of primitive semi-pyramid. So generating function of semi-pyramid is 1 over 1 multiplied minus q was the weight of this, multiplied by the weight of a shifted semi-pyramid. The weight is shifted, so I shift the weight, delta, means you replace everywhere q power I equivalent, and again you get the same summation with semi-pyramid. So you can repeat it. And there is minus q, so there is a plus q. I repeat it, and I repeat it infinitely, and I get the continued fraction. Okay. So now I have to prove that this continued fraction is equal to the numerator divided by denominator, the left-hand side of which Roger-Ramanujan identity. Now I need a lemma in the theory of heaps of pieces, the inversion lemma. So when you have a weighted heaps like this, with this weight, the inversion lemma tells you that the generating function of weighted heaps, this is very general. I am going to apply this to semi-pyramid. The generating function of heaps is the inverse of the generating function of trivial heaps. What means trivial heaps? And there is a plus or minus according, this is the number of pieces of the trivial heaps. And trivial heaps means that all the pieces are on the floor. Everybody is on the floor. There is no pieces floating in the air. No, they are all at the 0 level. So this is an inversion lemma. You can many theorems in linear algebra, many theorems. You can put them in this, by putting good weight, good hips, good things, you can have many theorems. The linear algebra in many theorems can be put in this way. So this is trivial hips. This is a visualization of the trivial hips of pieces. And this is the hips of pieces, which means intuitively that putting pieces one over another is equivalent to take the inverse of a generating function. Now I need an extension. I need a generating function of semi-pyramid, which is a special kind of hips. If you take any hips of dimers, then if you have the trivial hips of dimers, all the dimers are on the floor, the inverse will be the generating function of hips of dimers. But I need a generating function of semi-pyramid of hips of dimers, which means there is only one maximal piece, and the maximal piece is touching the vertical axis. Maximal piece is projection is a dimer 0, 1. So I need an extension of the inversion lemma. I'm going to take the generating function of hips, of weighted hips, such that the projection of the maximal piece is contain a certain set, capital M, of basic pieces. For example, for my semi-pyramid, the maximal piece, the projection, my set M, is exactly the dimer, unique dimer 0, 1. And the theorem tells you that the generating function for such heaps of pieces, with a certain condition of the maximal piece, I don't say that the maximal pieces are exactly M. I say they are contained inside M. And then I have the analog. The denominator is the same, and the numerator is exactly the generating function of trivial hips with pieces which does not belong to M. So this is numerator, pieces not in M. This is trivial hips. And I'm going to apply this to the semi-pyramid, interpreting the Ramanujan continuum fraction. So the maximal piece of my hips interpreting Ramanujan continuum fraction are exactly, the projection is 0, 1. So the denominator is going to be trivial hips of dimers, and the numerator is going to be trivial hips of dimers, which does not contain the dimer 0, 1. So what is D? Trivial hips of dimers. It's exactly D partition. Because here it's an example of trivial hips, minus force Q3, Q6, Q8, and you get these numbers, it's a D partition. The difference between two consecutive parts is at least 2. Because the best you can do is to the two dimer touch, and the difference will be at least 2. So the D is exactly, the denominator is this, is the left-hand side of the first Ramanujan identity. Now what is the numerator? Numerator is N, it's trivial hips of pieces, which does not contain the maximal piece, which is 0, 1. So it's such partition. So it's 2 by 2 disjoint dimers, which does not contain 0. So and this is exactly D partition, which does not contain the part 1. You are adding N. This means that you avoid this point. So the numerator is going to be exactly the second left-hand side, the left-hand side of the second Ramanujan identity. And so you get a proof of this by interpreting this as semi-pyramid of dimers, trivial hips of dimers, and trivial hips of dimers not containing 0. Now if you put the convergent means if you put Q equal 1, it's well known that you get the golden number, continuum fraction of golden number. And I'm going to give a proof of the convergent. If you take the convergent, you cut the continuum fraction. The convergent here will be 2, 3, 3, 5, and what you get, the convergent of this continuum fraction for Q equal 1 are exactly the ratio of 2 consecutive Fibonacci numbers. So if you take the ratio of 2 consecutive Fibonacci numbers, the limit is the golden ratio minus 1. So here now we can see this on with the proof I gave, is that taking the convergent, if I take the convergent of Ramanujan continuum fraction, this means that this pyramid is only contained on this left-hand side. You forbid, you cut as soon as you have cutting the contraction means cutting the heaps of pieces on the vertical line. So you have to find the derivative function of such semi-pyramid which are bounded only, which are included in a certain segment 0k. So you cut the contraction, you bound, this means equivalent to put heaps on this segment. And if you apply the formula n over d, what you get is d is going to be matching to be 2 by 2 disjoint. It's again trivial heaps of pieces, but on a finite segment. And the number of such matching, the matching of a graph, is exactly the Fibonacci numbers. Because, of course, number of such matching, you look the last point, and there is two cases. Maybe the point is isolated, maybe there is a diamond on this point. And looking the last point gives you very easily this recurrent solution. So the number of such matching is the Fibonacci numbers. And the numerator is, again, you avoid this. So it's the Fibonacci numbers in this case. The denominator is fk plus 1, and this fk. So the convergent of this Ramanujan conjugation for q equal 1 is the ratio of two consecutive Fibonacci numbers. I have proved this for q, and then I put q equal 1 to get Fibonacci numbers. So there is a beautiful theorem of Andrews. George Andrews is the pop of Q function, of Q series, etc. We have celebrated his 80th birthday not far ago, and he gave a theorem in 81, what he called the reciprocal of Roger Ramanujan identities, is that he takes quasi-partition. Instead of partition so that the number go decreasing, the part can increase a little by 1. Sometimes they go decreasing and they can increase by 1. So this is visualized by this picture. You see the 4, 4, 3, you go decreasing, 3, 1, and then it's allowed to increase by 1. 2, 3, 2, so you can put this quasi-partition in this picture. 4, 4, 3, so you put a stair here, and you get 4, 4, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. And then Andrews said that instead of taking the ratio of the two Ramanujan contraction, he just takes the inverse of the first. And he says that this inverse is a derivative function up to the sign of q power, the number of cells, the number of parts, of a quasi-partition. And this was published in 81. So now we can, with the heaps of diamonds, you can easily explain this. Because we apply just the inversion lemma. The inverse of trivial heaps of diamonds is going to be the derivative function of heaps of diamonds. So what I get, this is a general heaps of diamonds, and this is the inverse of the denominator, the inverse of the first Ramanujan identity. And I have to show that this is exactly the derivative function of quasi-partition. With the weight, you see. I put the weight, I put positive weight, because in Andrews' theorem there is a -1 something, so I have to prove only I can, up to the sign, so this is weight Q, Q2, Q3, Q4. And now there is a well-known theorem in the commutation monoid. There is many words which are equivalent for commutation, and there is some normal form. You want to have a representative of the commutation class, so there is a Fourier normal form, and there is also the lexicographic normal form, sometimes called Knuth normal form. So normal form is, you take the smallest lexicographic word, and this is the equivalent in terms of heaps. You take the rightmost maximal piece, which is this one. You take the rightmost maximal piece. This is, you put a label 1. You take off this. Now again, you take the rightmost maximal piece, the second one. Suppose you take off these two pieces. Take the rightmost maximal piece. This is 3. You delete. Rightmost maximal piece. So each time, so you put a total order on the dimers. Each time you take the rightmost maximal piece and you delete it. So there is a total order. And to this total order, you can associate a quasi-partition. Just look, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3. So you can, if you just take the indices of each dimers in the order of this lexicographic or Knuth normal form, you get this, and it is a quasi-partition. It's obvious from the definition, because when you delete, take a maximal piece, and you take the next maximal piece, which is the rightmost one, what happened is, so here is always decreasing, but here is increasing, 1, 2, between 4 and 5, it's because you say when you take, this was already deleted. When I delete the rightmost maximal piece, the next maximal piece, maybe it can be more, how I can say that. You see, because when I delete the maximal piece, the next one is on the left, but the worst which can happen, it just shifted by 1 on the right. Because suppose the next maximal piece, when you delete this, suppose the next maximal piece was, if you deleted the next maximal piece was this, then you should have taken this one before this one. So deleting at each time the rightmost maximal piece gives you this condition that at most the next one will increase at most by 1. So this gives a quasi-partition, and this gives a proof of George Andrews' theorem. So, oh, you have plenty of time. So I will finish with an epilogue. No, it's not finished. So I will finish with an epilogue, Ramanujan and the hard hexagon model. So we are going to a certain, much difficult level. We are in statistical mechanics, in statistical physics, with the phase transition, critical phenomena. You want to understand how the water is boiling, how the ice is coming, or how the Ising model for ferromagnetism. And so there is a model in statistical mechanics. From local interaction, you want to learn about global behavior of the. There is a famous Ising model with and so there is a book by Baxter on exactly solved model. They want to give some, of course, the exactly solved models, they are very far from the natural model in nature, but the behavior look like a real model. So in general, in statistical mechanics, you have a thermodynamical function coming from a summation over all some finite things, etc. And this thermodynamical function depends on the temperature and the phase transition. It's happened here when this function becomes infinite. There is a singularity. This is a critical temperature. And there is an exponent. The behavior of near the phase transition is given by what is called in physics a critical exponent. So what Ramanujan is doing in this story, this is a famous hard hexagon model, a gas model by Baxter. So it's a two-dimensional model. You are on the hexagonal lattice, and this is supposed to be a gas with molecule. You see, the molecules are hexagon, so there is some interaction between the hexagon, and the solution of the hard hexagonal model is the limit of the interaction. There is some real parameter, but the limit of this model has a, so this is a gas. If the hexagon, there is very few hexagon, you see, I just want to show you intuitively where is the phase transition. See, on the hexagonal lattice, you can put 3 colors, green, blue, and red. So each hexagon, this is a red hexagon, this is a green hexagon, this is a blue hexagon. If you have a very big lattice with very few hexagons, which symbolic the molecule of the gas, then the probability to be blue, green, or red is 1/3. So this is, we are in the gas, in the gas state. Now, if you have many hexagons, the worst is this. They are all, so if you take many hexagons, then they're all red. And if you begin to make some hole in this lattice, if you begin with the whole packed lattice, and you begin to delete some hexagon, then the probability to get a blue, green, or red, you have a very high probability to get a red. So it's no more 1/3. So there is a phase transition. This is a frozen state, or this is another frozen state. And between all packed molecule and very few molecules, there is a transition somewhere. And this was given the solution by Ron Baxter, the solution of the hard hexagonal model. And surprisingly, everybody was surprised, all the commentators, is that Ramanujan is appearing in the story. If you take the two Roger Ramanujan identities, again, if you take the ratio of these two, so if you take the Ramanujan continued fraction, R of Q, it is the ratio of the two Roger Ramanujan identity. The ratio is written as an infinite product. So this is the Ramanujan continued fraction. If you write T equal minus Q, this continued fraction power 5. Power 5 of the Ramanujan continued fraction. If you write Y equal this beautiful ratio of infinite product, so you have T function of Q, Y function of Q, and if in your mind you eliminate Q between the two, you get a function Z of T. And Z of T is exactly the partition function of the gas model. This is the partition function. So where is the critical phenomena? The critical phenomena is when you put Q equal 1. Everybody is 0 divided by 0, so this is when the gas is becoming solid for Q equal 1. And for Q equal 1, if you put the Ramanujan continued fraction for Q equal 1, you get the golden number, le nombre d'or. And the critical temperature, at temperature critique, is power 5, this golden number. And so you have an explicit expression for the critical temperature. And Baxter have solved this model. He gave explicit expression. All this equation was given by Baxter. And so there is a critical temperature where the gas is becoming solid. And there exists a critical exponent, the alpha, is 5/6. This is deduced from the equation. And 5/6, I have been told by physicists that if you take some model, helium monolayer absorbed on a graphic surface in a two-dimensional model, there is a phase transition, and the critical component, they can measure it, is close to 5/6. So see, this model, maybe of gas model, is very simple, but it can be solvable, exactly solved model, but it behaves like model in the real world. Now I will finish with something very beautiful. It's that if you take the t times the logarithmic derivative of the partition function, this is called the density of the gas. And if you take this derivative function, so up to the sign, the Bn is a positive integer. Bn is an integer, and Bn can be interpreted is going to be exactly the number of pyramid of n hexagon. So what is pyramid of hexagon? The basic pieces are going to be hexagon, like the diamonds and chessboard, and you take heaps of such hexagon. This is a trivial heaps of hexagon. Again, a trivial heaps of hexagon, and you put them one over another, like this, you see. And this is a heaps of hexagon. And pyramid means there is only one maximal piece. This is a pyramid of hexagon. This is a pyramid of hexagon. And I claim that in the heaps theory, you can give an interpretation of the density of the gas, T times the logarithmic derivative of the partition function, and the density of the gas, the coefficient Bn of T power n, is exactly the number of pyramid of hexagon. Up to translation. So you have to count such pyramid of hexagon. And now the beautiful thing is that this generating function satisfies the following equation. It's an algebraic equation. It satisfies, Y satisfies this very beautiful algebraic equation. Yes. In fact, the physicists in Tata, they give me an algebraic system which is much more simple. The Catalan number is behind this. So this is a beautiful algebraic equation of pyramid of hexagon. There is it's more simple. There is a system of equation when we can believe that it's possible to do this combinatorial. So we need, nobody have found any combinatorial explanation. Why there is a Roger-Ramanujan identity? Where is the Q? Find a combinatorial proof directly that this is algebraic derivative function. And the interest for finding such combinatorial proof is that if you replace the hexagonal lattice, but the square lattice, so you take heaps of square, then this is called the hard square model, and this is totally open problem. No physicist, to my knowledge, have found an explicit solution, the same as for hexagon with Ramanujan. It's because the solution of Baxter, he put two parameters on the model, And the hard hexagonal model is the limit of this two-parameter model, and he put some corner transition matrix, and it works if the two parameters satisfy a certain equation on a B-quadratic curve, on a B-quadratic surface. And so the hard hexagonal, the limit is on the curve where the model is solvable, but the hard square is outside of this curve, and you cannot solve the model. And so this is open problem, and to find an explanation or to find bijection, to find a proof with many words, to find interpretation would mean why is it algebraic. Some students they try to show there is some program to show that you can find the geometric function, the first 50 term, and try to guess that it is algebraic. But to my knowledge, nobody have been. You need a lot of term, too much term to be able to compute. So no, we don't know if it's algebraic, and we have no explanation for this. So this is a beautiful open problem related again to Ramanujan. Thank you. Any question? Yes?
You replace your timers by, say, primers or other sorts of basic pieces. And
Timers or other pieces? Or?
like, say, longer, say, I to I plus 2.
So you can take segment, for example, instead of dimers, and there is some object in combinatorics, the so-called staircase polygon, the Q-polygon number we have seen in the course, the staircase polygon or polyparallelogram. And if you want to count this by area, it's in bijection with semi-pyramids of segment, with a Q with some weight, and this now the denominator and the numerator is going to be Bessel function. So it's possible, and we have solved some problem like this, the Q-polygon numbers related to Catalan number. And the explanation why the Bessel function appear in some rational fraction, this was work of Karlitz, it's explained by the same kind of methodology, and replacing segment, dimers by segment, and with a good weight. It's we have done many things like this.
So does that give you fractions as well?
This is more complicated. It will be multi-continued fraction.
Any more questions?
Yes?
So, in the partial commutation,
Yes?
this I minus j is
Mm-hmm.
more than 2 then.
Yeah, yes.
So, if you define an arbitrary commutation between vectors, then
Yes, it's the general theory of heaps is for any arbitrary commutation. So you take it's equivalent to you take a graph, and there is some edges, and the edges is the pieces are dependent. When there is no edges, there is commutation. When there is edges, there is and then above all each vertices of the graph, then you have a whole many ball which are a whole fiber of ball. And if the big ball, and if the two vertex are adjacent in the graph, means the ball cannot, they are going to hurt each other when they move in the, so it's possible to extend this to any binary relation. And of course, the general theory, everything works for a general binary relation. And